Falcon and the Winter Soldier is finally here. Episode 1 just finished premiering on Disney Plus, and I'm here to give you guys my spoiler review for episode 1. This is your warning because this video will be containing heavy spoilers because that's basically all I'm going to be talking about in this video. But without wasting any more time, let's get right into it. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was starting at the beginning. The introduction scene was absolutely awesome. So let's actually start from the very beginning where Falcon was talking to Cap. I think it felt like, was it just in his head or was it like right after the events of Endgame and he was kind of reliving that conversation? I still don't know, but they were talking about him being worthy, and I thought it was pretty cool that that was the first thing we started with, because that's the entirety of the arc. That's where Sam's character starts in this show, is the arc of, is he worthy enough to take up the mantle? And obviously we find out later in the show that, later in this episode, that he doesn't think he's worthy of it. But moving past that, I wanted to really quickly mention that fight scene. The fight scene was absolutely crazy. Like right when I thought it was about to end, it kept going. I thought it had great camera work. I thought it was a little bit choppy at times, like the skydiving parts, because obviously they had to hide the actors' faces because they probably had stunt doubles doing all the stuff. But I thought nevertheless it was pretty cool. It was a pretty nice action sequence. Again, camera work was kind of iffy, but you could definitely tell they had CGI doubles, like completely like CGI characters in there at times, and it still looked really good. It looked really top tier, and you can definitely tell Marvel put that high budget on this show, because this episode so far looks really good. I'm excited to see what action they can do, because obviously they have a really high budget, and I'm just excited to see what they do, because even as of right now, the action looks like it's movie level action, and it's only the first episode. So I'm excited to see where they go from there. And just talking movie level action, it feels like a Marvel movie. It feels like Winter Soldier. It feels like where we saw Bucky and Falcon in Civil War. It feels like we've seen this action before, and I'm glad that this is really resembling what we've seen before. So moving on past that introduction scene, we go to this place called Tunisia, I think it's called. Tunisia, I don't know exactly what it's called, but basically there's this dude there and he was talking to Falcon, and I was like, okay, this dude's like a one-off. He's probably just some random dude giving Falcon information. They probably will talk like one time throughout this entire series, but we see him later in the episode as well. So basically this dude teases a terrorist group. So I knew that we were going to get some sort of tease for a terrorist group. I didn't really expect much in this episode when it came to long-term villains, because obviously we already knew what we were getting into with this show, unlike WandaVision where they just randomly dropped us in. This show, we knew the backstory of all these characters, and it just fleshed out everything, so we actually have a really good understanding as to what they've been through over the past 6 months since the events of Endgame when we saw them last. So basically the guy with Bucky teases, okay, there's this terrorist group, and the terrorist group says that the world was better during the blip. So obviously no one likes that because that's half the population being gone. And Sam Wilson was one of the people that was gone during the blip. So it kind of hits home, kind of resonates with him a little bit more. So I felt like it was super cool that we got to see the connection between the blip, and I'll go talking about that later, because Sam talks about the blip a lot in this episode, because it's one thing that really affected him in terms of just his life overall, and it has a big impact in the later parts of the episode, obviously. But I thought it was pretty cool the way that they kind of teased the terrorist. We didn't get much information, but we got just enough, and then the terrorists show back up and later in the episode. After we leave Tunisia, we get to go to Washington, and we see the Smithsonian Speech from Sam. He talks about how the shield is only meant for one person, and that's Captain America, and he gives up the shield to the museum. He says, I don't want the mantle. And then we see Rhodey there, which I didn't expect at all. So I think that's one of the few characters that they said would have a cameo. I thought that was pretty cool that we got to see Rhodey, because obviously he's part of the army and all that kind of stuff. So he was there when Sam was giving the shield off to the Smithsonian Museum. I thought that entire sequence was cool. It was cool that they incorporated Rhodey, because Rhodey had been next to Iron Man his whole life. So I felt like it was super cool, or during their entire career. So I thought it was super cool that we got to see that parallel, and we got to see Rhodey asking Sam questions, and I thought it was super cool to see that back and forth. And those conversations, for example, like this also happens later on the episode with Bucky and one of the other characters. These conversations tell us so much about this character's past without making it feel forced. It actually naturally comes out just during conversation. So randomly during the Washington part of this episode, the beginning part of the Washington episode, we move on to Bucky's intro, and I think that Bucky's intro was pretty good. I was really confused at first because it was just like some weird action sequence and he had the long hair and the mask on. So I was like, what is this? That's not Bucky. Bucky has short hair in this show, right? Because that's the first time we saw Bucky. We didn't even know like who he was, what he was like looking like. So it was like an action sequence, but it just ended up being a nightmare. And then basically we saw him kill a bunch of terrorists, and then he killed this innocent guy. And we have to realize, I didn't realize until later on in the episode, he was brainwashed during that time. I completely forgot about that. I don't know why, but I completely forgot that he was brainwashed, so that's why he killed the innocent man, and that comes up later. And I don't know if many of you guys noticed this, but like I said before, it does come up later, and I'm going to explain to you why it comes up later and why it's significant. But I don't think many people caught the reason why. I'll let you know a little bit, but then we get to cut to this therapy scene where it's Bucky and his therapist, and he kind of talks about his past and how he hasn't had a break. The only time he had peace with himself was when he was in Wakanda, and we saw that in the post-credit scene of Black Panther. So I thought it was super cool that I finally got to see the dark side, I guess, of mental health when it comes to Bucky Barnes. He said he hasn't stopped fighting for 90 years, and the only time he did stop was in Wakanda, of course. And even then, he was right back to fighting again, right? Like his short break in Wakanda. And he said he wanted peace. And his therapist knew that he didn't want peace. I mean, yeah, his therapist didn't know he didn't want peace. So I thought it's pretty cool. And I like the way that they introduced Bucky. They start off with that action sequence. It was weird in the moment, but when I rewatched the episode, I realized that it wasn't weird at all. It was actually super cool the way that they start off with this past, and it made the audience confused at first. At least it made me confused. And then we went back and we saw his therapy session. It actually talks about Bucky's mental health, and I think that's one thing that I really, really want to make sure this show goes deep into is his mental health, because that's one of the biggest parts of the Winter Soldier is what he used to have to go through and what the repercussions, because we also got told that he's pardoned from everything that he did in the past because he was under mind control, and so his mind was being persuaded and everything. So it wasn't actually him, it was Hydra controlling him. So I thought it was super cool the way that they even brought that up, that he was being pardoned for everything, because I know that question would have definitely come up amongst fans. Why did he be able to kill all these people and no one cared? He was pardoned by the government, and he has to live up to that. He can't just keep killing people. He has to show the government that he's not a threat. And that also contributes to its mental health, because he has to realize that, okay, the government trusts me, but mentally he can't handle that. He's just instinctively like scared that he's going to do something wrong. And overall, just the way they handle his character so far in this first episode, building off of what we've known previously from him, and then the events after Endgame, I really like what they did with this character. And then we also got a Bucky love interest teased. I had no idea, no clue that this was coming. So the bar scene with the old dude, and then the old dude asks the girl, and is like, oh, you want to go on a date with my friend Bucky Barnes and whatever. So he didn't actually say that, but basically, I thought it was super cool that the old man and the girl and Bucky all were introduced like at near the same time. It wasn't like split up into long different periods of time. It was all at once, so it made his story feel more cohesive. So I was actually really confused that they introduced a love interest, but then towards the end of the episode, we saw that didn't really work out too well. I think one of the weirdest things in this episode was the tone switches, especially since we were moving from Sam to Bucky, back to Sam, back to Bucky. So I thought it was super cool the way that they did the switches in terms of characters, but that caused for a lot of weird tone switches. And I saw this in the Bucky introduction period of this episode, because we got to see him with the old dude, and then randomly the music just went really deep and silent, and it was the old dude started reminiscing on his son that died. So I don't know, it just felt really weird. Like they were having a good time, they were laughing about the old guy asking the girl out for Bucky, and then it automatically went super dark. So I didn't really know what that was about. And then it randomly cut to Sam in Louisiana. So that's the next little part of the episode. That's when we finally start to get the family tension that we were hearing about, that we were going to get like for the Blip, because obviously people haven't been together, like families can't really make decisions together, financial stuff is all over the place, and obviously we'll get more into that later in the episode. But the main conflict for Sam in this episode with his sister is that there's a boat that they are going to sell. Sam doesn't want to sell it because he technically owns half of it. Same thing with the house. But his sister owns half of it and has been alive the last 5 years. And she's the one who has to go through everything. Sam's like, I can fix everything. And then we have the whole bank scene at the end of the episode. I just really like that this episode starts to show the real life problems of stuff that happens after the blip. We haven't really gotten that in a serious fashion, especially in any of the Marvel projects or anything like that. We got a little bit of it in WandaVision when we saw Monica coming back, and then her mom, she just never saw her mom again because she died in that 5 years that Monica was blipped away. And then we also got it in Far From Home, but it was super kidified, I guess. It was really dumb. They joked around about it. I felt like it's one of those things in the MCU that you shouldn't make jokes about at all. It should be one of the most serious things that's ever happened in MCU history. It's something that literally changed the entire world, and it happened 3 separate times: Thanos, Hulk, and then Iron Man at the end. So it's not something to joke about, in my opinion, and this show finally is doing it justice. It's one of the most influential events in the entire MCU. It affects everyone, whether you're a superhero or you're just a regular civilian, or both, like Sam is. You have these real life problems that all start to conflict with one another, and this episode does a great job of giving you that conflict between the real life situations that we've never really seen before in the MCU, as well as the superhero problems that we've seen in the MCU. We see Sam Wilson. We see him being a superhero. We see him doing all these superhero things. But you never even realize that he has a family back home. He has a sister. He has nephews that he has to take care of and help out with. And it's just like you never think of any of those things until you see it on screen. And this episode did that justice. Now I want to move back to Bucky at the bar, which we saw right after the Sam Louisiana scene. We saw the date with Bucky and the other girl. I forgot her name, but we saw the date with both of them. And I think this also goes back to the Sam and Rhodey thing, like how they were talking. In this scene with Bucky and the girl starts to talk to Bucky. We know these things already that he's answering. But it's cool to see him say it because we've gotten context from third party. We've never gotten Bucky Barnes saying all this stuff about his family, his sister, all that. We've never gotten that, and I think it's really cool that we finally got to see that and hear him talk about it firsthand. And then this is another thing that was probably super big. This is where I'm going to talk about the old guy again. We saw that the guy that Bucky killed in the introduction for Bucky was the old dude's son that died. I don't know if you guys knew that, but that's why Bucky started to get his, it looked like he was kind of regaining memories or something, or maybe he remembered finally when he was on the date with that girl, and then remember he ran to the old dude's apartment, and that's when he paid him back for dinner. So maybe he was gonna go there to say something, but maybe he just got too scared and didn't say it, and he just paid him for dinner. But I don't know. It was super interesting to see that, and I'm excited to see how that plays out, because if Bucky tells that man, he's literally going to be devastated. So I doubt he's going to tell him. Maybe he does tell him, and Bucky wants to live with the consequence, and maybe that'll make him stronger, and that'll fuel him to be a better person, I guess. But I don't know how they're going to handle that storyline. And if it's not his son, I'm just going to be sounding like an idiot right now. But I think it's his son. It looked like the guy that we saw in the first part, and then the picture at the little home shrine that the old dude had in his apartment in New York. So I definitely think that it's the same guy, and I think it'd be cool story development for Bucky, because that means he killed the dude's son that he's been hanging out with this whole time in Brooklyn. So I don't know. I think it was a super cool way to connect to them, I guess, other than just them being friends. And I'm excited to see where that storyline goes. Now, moving on, for the rest of it, and for the rest of the episode, basically, I just wrote down some stuff that I liked. So we talked about the dude that was talking to Sam is tracking the terrorists. So the dude in the beginning of the episode that was talking to Sam that I said, oh, he was just a one-off. No, he was actually important. He was tracking the terrorists, and basically the terrorists were robbing some sort of bank, and they're not just normal terrorists. I was like, okay, they're just normal people, guns, whatever, regular MCU gun villains. No, they are superhumans, bro. They are they're super soldiers. They're some Bucky Barnes type of people. And so I think this is one way that they'll be able to connect Bucky Barnes and Sam Wilson, because Sam knows Bucky is a super soldier. So maybe Bucky will know how to take down these people, and that's what will make them work together. So I'm excited to see how they play that out, because I'm actually really excited to see the way that they decide to have those two interact for the first time, because obviously they might bond over hearing the Captain America news over on the internet and stuff. Maybe they just bond over that super soldier thing, and Sam is like, oh, come help me, come work for me, whatever, come work with me, and then that causes their friendship to kind of blossom. But I don't really know how they're gonna go in that direction. And then I think the final thing I want to talk about, actually, no, second to last thing I want to talk about is the real life hero problems that we mentioned before. Now I'm going to specifically talk about the bank sequence now, because before I just talked about the regular blip, whatever. This bank sequence went deep, man. Like, it was basically like, he was like, oh, the bank teller was like, can I get your selfie? And then he's like, Sam at first was like, yeah, and he was like super hype, and he's like, so can you give us a loan? And then the bank teller was like, no. And I would have been so mad if I was Sam, bro. And he was like, oh, you haven't been here for 5 years or whatever. And Sam's like, I haven't even existed for the last 5 years. And that makes 100% sense. Like, it makes sense to, like, he didn't have a choice. He was blipped away. He was disappeared for 5 years. And the bank teller still asked for a picture. I thought that was funny but sad, but like, it was emotional at the same time, because it's like, they don't care enough about these heroes to even like give them any lenience when it comes to loans. Like, they're out there saving the world. They're the reason why your family's even there right now. And it was dumb to me. It was, I mean, no, not dumb. The concept is dope, but as a viewer, it was dumb that the teller wouldn't give him the money. So I like what they're doing right now with the making us take sides. I mean, I think we're all gonna side with the superheroes here, because that's what we've seen in the MCU the whole time. But they're bringing back that political conflict from Winter Soldier, where it's like the government versus basically superheroes and friendship with superheroes. So I'm excited to see what they do with that whole concept of the political division, because I think that, I mean, personally, I think superheroes deserve everything. I mean, they're saving their life. Give them a loan, bro. What is it? Is it gonna hurt you? No, just give them the loan. They're saving your life, your family, your friends, and everything. So I think from a viewer standpoint, it's good that I'm saying all these things, because that's what the show wants us to do. And I think that's great. I think they're going in the right direction with that storyline. Finally, the final thing I want to talk about is the new Captain America. He is not my Cap. Hashtag not my Cap. He is not my Cap, bro. He looks like the grandpa from Up. That is the guy he looks like. So I don't know. I'm excited to see, because it looked like at the end Sam was super disappointed, and I think the main reason for this is, and obviously people are gonna be like, oh yeah, he gave up the shield, he gave the shield. No, I think that Sam gave up the shield because he knew that the one person that could symbolize this like, or that could take the mantle of this symbol, the Captain America shield, is Steve Rogers. He's the one person that is fit enough. He's the only man, woman, human to ever be able to represent this symbol well enough for it to mean anything to people. And then the government just decided, oh, no, it's someone else. We're giving it to someone else. So sucks to suck, heroes. But yeah, I liked what they did with with Sam, especially at the end of the episode. It was like, and the thing is, it didn't feel like a random cliffhanger like WandaVision stuff. Like, it actually felt like we built up to the episode. We built everything up in the episode. We got to see these conflicts. Everything is going wrong in the world for Sam. And at the end of the episode, it gets 10 times worse. But that's basically all I have to talk about for the first episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like ring down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.